Good Saturday morning to you, and welcome to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law. Anne Charron. Normally, we also have Ned Byron. He's not with us this morning. It's Anne and I. Anne is flying solo this morning. How's it going, Anne?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Well, good. Nice to see you this bright and early on a Saturday morning. How was your week?
It was really busy.
You spoke about so much last week. It was a great overview. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
But it made me realize, whoa, each of the issues that you gave, and then some. There were even issues that you didn't even get into because we just ran out of time.
Yeah.
They kind of need their own show because there's so much to elaborate on. Let's talk a little bit about incapacity this week.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people come to us and this is what they say. You just need a simple will. And I go, okay, that's great. But it's my job. I don't want to commit malpractice. So I'm going to talk to you about some other things. Because when people think about estate planning, they think about like what's going to happen when I'm dead. And I try to make people realize like what's going to happen if you're still hanging on. You know,
yeah.
And so that's what incapacity is about. That's part of the planning is about like what happens if you're still here, but you're in the hospital or you have something that happened to you. So yeah, I wanted to start off talking about incapacity and what that means. And
yeah, what exactly? All right, so you kind of explain a little bit of what exactly incapacity is.
So there's like temporary kind of incapacity, right? So that's if you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, you have hip replacement surgery, and you're in rehab, right? Those are things we expect people to recover from and go back to their own lives. But for a period of time, you are incapable. You are not available to do what you would otherwise do. And then there's permanent incapacity, traumatic brain injury. You think of dementia, right? So some type of dementing illness, which has kind of robbed you of your faculties over a period of time and you're no longer able. So incapacity kind of runs the gamut, and it could happen to anyone. Ned always has a way when he talks to clients, he has this statistic, and I'm so sorry I don't have the source of it, but we are 68% of us are going to have some event that is going to disable us during our lifetime. And so that's a pretty high statistic. And so when you realize that, you think, okay, what happens? Yeah. What happens when I'm not the same person I was, even if it was just for a short period of time?
So depending on the incapacity, does that depend on the plan behind it? Like you had mentioned a stroke or a heart attack or a hip replacement. But then you know, there are also people who don't quite fully recover from strokes.
Yeah, I know.
There could be paralysis involved.
That's exactly right.
So, you know, would you customize? Well, of course, it's hard to. You don't have a crystal ball, neither. How can you foresee into the future?
Yeah.
So, is there a different plan that you would structure according to the incapacity? Or?
Well, I think that's really interesting that you would even talk about that, because clearly, if you've had the stroke and you're paralyzed, or you can't speak, or I mean, like it's a little too late, right? It's too late.
True.
So there is things, and I don't know if we'll talk about it in this episode, but it's called conservatorships, and you have to go to probate court.
Okay.
And in order to help that person in that circumstance. But what I was kind of hoping we could talk about in terms of documents and planning were, what are the documents that you can prepare now while you're healthy? And you may not want to talk about this, but who you choose to help you make decisions, right? So, and those documents are going to apply. So if we have, for example, a financial power of attorney, we talked a little bit about that in our last week, because I don't know if you remember, but the case that Ned and I met on, there was a forged power of attorney. So power of attorneys are really, really like important documents. And we try to have people prepare them when they are healthy, when they are capable.
Of sound mind.
Yes, of sound mind.
Oh, yeah.
And that's right. And can make the choices from that perspective. In other words, not out of panic, you know?
All right. So there's different types of planning then, right?
Yeah, there are.
I guess there's a financial power of attorney. There's a few. So let's go into those.
Okay, thank you. So financial power of attorney is one. And then there's healthcare power of attorneys, right? So we need somebody who's going to manage our money while we are unable to. We need somebody who's going to make our healthcare decisions for us when we're unable to.
All right, so let me pause you right there. How do you delegate that? I mean, other than asking your client, could it be the same person, or do you go to them and say, do you have a family member, a child who works in healthcare or works in finances, and then delegate according to what someone's experiences and strengths are?
Well, certainly, I think that's you try to delegate according to someone's strengths, right? Because we have children who we might say one is really good with money. And clearly, we want that child to be the one who manages our money.
Makes sense. You hope.
But that child, I mean, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. That child may really not be very compassionate. Let's pretend.
Oh, okay.
And parents will come to me, you know what? If I pick that kid, he's going to pull the plug. Right? It's over. It's over, Marianne. We can't. I mean, so there could be a different child who would be the healthcare one. Or conversely, you have a child and they'll be like, oh my God, she'll be a mess. He'll be a mess. He's going to fall apart. So I can't have that child be the healthcare power of attorney. I think when I talk to people, I feel like the guiding principle is you got to pick someone you trust. You got to pick someone who knows you, or hopefully knows you, and isn't going to take advantage.
So that may or may not be a child.
It may not be.
And there are also individuals who have no children.
Yeah. That's true.
And maybe no nieces and nephews. And then where do they go?
Yeah, well, we do have, I have had clients who have asked me if I would do it, if that's something that we would do. I try not to. I try very hard to have them pick somebody who knows them better and isn't going to have to charge them. You know what I mean? Right? And sometimes senior centers have people. There are organizations who will do it because there are more and more people. I think, again, last week we talked about how our children don't always necessarily live near us anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
Clearly, Zoom. If the pandemic has done nothing, it's allowed technology to bring people closer because we've had to, right? So we can have some sort of connection with a family member who's distant, and it doesn't matter because our family member who lives, 2 towns over can only see us via Zoom anyway. Right. So the distance doesn't make the same, doesn't have the same gravitas as it used to. And so we do. We try to pick someone who we think is going to be the best fit and who's going to be honest and good with our money. So. What
about with healthcare then? A healthcare power of attorney has got to be next to finances. It's probably right up there.
Yeah, we have more protections in place regarding finances because we have so much opportunity for financial exploitation. But healthcare, these are life and death decisions. You have that heart attack that we talked about. Who's the person who's going to say, I want him to go to this hospital? I want this rehab facility. I'm demanding that he have PT. You can't discharge him to home. He's not ready to go home. He can barely function, right? You know what I mean? But you need someone who's going to be that advocate and that voice to make those decisions for you. And so that's what the healthcare agent is going to be doing.
Okay. How about creating a living will?
So let's talk, that's kind of a natural,
is that the first thing that you do? Is create? No, really. If I were to come in and talk to you or somebody, what's the first? Maybe I'm going in so many different directions at once. Is the living will the first step? Or?
Okay, so it depends because sometimes people come to me and that's their primary objective because they just had a parent who didn't have one, or they're having surgery and their doctor says the hospital's going to ask you if you have a living will. And so some people will call me up and will say, I need a living will. And I say, all right, well, let's tell me what's going on in your life.
Sure. You got to start somewhere,
Why do you need a living will? Okay, I can do them, right?
Because I go hang gliding every Saturday. That's why. Right. I jump out of airplanes on Fridays.
And you don't tell your insurance company.
No.
But exactly. And then they start to tell me what's going on in their life, right? And so if it's the hang gliding person, then I can be a little lighter and the conversation's a little more fun. But if they're having a serious operation, they were diagnosed with cancer or something like that, then you really have to take it one step at a time and say, all right, then let's really try to shape what needs to be done so that you can worry about getting better, you can worry about healing, and I can worry about those other pieces for you. And so the living will, you know, that's when you're at the end. Or yeah, I have this story that I talk about. I have a client. He has since passed away, but I have a client who came to me and we did all of his documents that included a living will. His sister was his power of attorney. So the person who's the power of attorney is the one who has to make those healthcare decisions for him, right? Yep. And he was in a horrible car accident and he went to Yukon and he was in the ICU. And she called me up crying, saying to me that they didn't honor his living will. The hospital is not honoring his living will. And so she's telling me this whole story. And I have to say to her, but in the most kindest way, because she clearly is trying her best. And I have to say to her, but do they think he's going to survive? Because if they think he's going to live, that's what doctors do, right? Doctors are supposed to keep you alive. They take a Hippocratic oath.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So
you hope anyway.
So the living will only applies when you are dying. When the doctor says he isn't going to die, we can't exactly tell you when, but he's going. And his organs are shutting down. And so you're like brain dead. You have no response. And so when I got her to understand that I think that the doctors believe he's going to live, one, it calmed her down, right? So there was this sense
I was going to say, you would think she'd be happy. That's good news.
But it's so hard because you're just so involved in that moment, right? You're so distressed. You're emotional about it. It's a scary thing. And, but so a living will is like, it's
the directions.
Yeah. And it's, do you want CPR, right? For an older person, if someone was to do,
chest compressions at like 95 years old. Yeah.
It would kill them, right?
Yeah.
But for you or I, okay, who cares if we have a few broken ribs? Because we're going to recover. We expect that that's not going to kill us, right? Do we want food and hydration? Which would mean for someone, it could be a PEC tube. Like for an elderly person, like, do you really want to add that trauma to their body when they're older? Right? I don't know. I'm saying it's their choice. And so when you explain that to someone, do you want food? Do you want to be kept alive by intravenous food?
Do they look to you for guidance,
all the time,
And how do you not personalize it, or what's the word I'm looking for, where you're offering your opinion for your beliefs, what's good for you? You can't. You have to somehow differentiate that and say, but you need to do what's best for you. But yet, at the same time, they're looking back to you.
They are.
And volleying over to you and saying, but you're the one I'm...
Right? So oftentimes, you have to give like an example so that it becomes real to them, right? I mean, so I just gave you the example of the client with the living will.
Right.
And the other thing is that you're constantly trying to read people, like to understand, so you get to know them. And you say, all right, I don't know what your values are. And I will say that, I don't know what your values are. But this is a document that it's giving you the opportunity to let your family members, because I don't know if you told your child. I don't know if you've ever had that conversation with them. But this is the opportunity that you have to give them some guidance. Are you going to strike your child down by saying, oh my God, you didn't listen to me, right? If you didn't have that conversation. And so I do try really hard not to give I have to give them an opinion, but they do look to you for guidance.
Have you ever had a scenario where your client, a person who's offered, has this living will, and there's, I don't know, a child, or whether they're a power of attorney or not, didn't go according to what was requested by their parents' living will, and rather made their own decisions, said, no, mom or dad, you weren't even in your right mind. No, this is better for you. And it's more, they're kind of usurping what the request was for the dying, and interjecting their own belief.
Well, yeah, it happens. But that's why I'll say to someone, just remember, whoever you pick as your healthcare agent, are they going to honor your request?
Yeah.
And, clearly in the moment. So you're healthy, Gary. You come to me and we try to have, right? But and we have this conversation and you're like, you know what? Sign me up. I want a living will.
Mm-hmm.
I want my family to make sure don't give me anything. If I'm going, I'm going. Well, that's great in a hypothetical. That's great when you're healthy. But your spouse or your family member in that moment is going to maybe not say, oh my God, where's his living will? I know he did one. Marianne did one for him. Yeah. Where's the will? Where is the living will, right? Let's find it. What drawer did he put it in?
Right.
Okay. Is it on the flash drive? I mean, no one's thinking that. But your spouse is there talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, blah, blah, blah. She or he, your spouse is going to be trying to do their best in that moment, and might need some time before the plug is pulled. Might need to be able to process
They do.
It too,
it's exactly
right?
what I was thinking of.
So...
Doc, can you give me a day or two? I need to process this.
Yeah, it's too much. And so it's not as if a child is actually trying to go against a parent's wishes. It's just that now the child is confronted with an actual circumstance, an actual situation, with actual odds of living or dying, okay? Mm-hmm. And has to make the best decision possible in that circumstance.
What about a voluntary directive in the event of advanced dementia?
All right, well, that actually is a document that our office has created in response to our clients coming to us. So it's not an actual legal document. It is a voluntary document. And so many of us have had to go into a nursing home, pre-COVID, go into the nursing home, and you see the circle of people in their little wheelchairs, and you see their heads drooping over, and they're drooling, and Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack is some movie playing, and you say, this is not going to be me. If I have the advanced stages of dementia, please do not force feed me. Don't play airplane with my food. Okay? Don't give it to me, because this is not living. And so that's what that document is about. And it also says, don't keep giving me my blood pressure medication. Don't keep giving me medication that's going to sustain me in this non-living kind of state.
Even though you're otherwise physically healthy.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the tough line.
It's a tough line. So, look, I'm Italian and French. I live to eat. Right? So that if I'm not eating something, there's like something going on. Right. All right. But for other people, they just might not like the baby food that they're being presented with at the nursing home.
That's true.
Nursing home food has gotten better.
And a lot of people are aging in place now anyways, right?
We try very hard to be able to have people age in place. That's really important. Sometimes aging in place can be isolating, because you're no longer in a community, right? So you're in your little house and you don't necessarily go out. Aging in place.
But a familiar setting psychologically for the elderly. At least if they're suffering from dementia, at least they know where the restroom is, at least in the early stages.
That's so interesting you talk about that, because adult children come to me, and one of the things they say, or they try to convince their parent, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they try to convince their parent that they need to move to assisted living or move to someplace else. And I always say, do it while your parent has the ability, while they have capacity, because right now they've lived in that house for 47 years, and they know it's in their DNA how many steps it is to the kitchen. They know how many steps it is to the bathroom. They know where everything is, because when you have dementia, the first thing that goes is short-term memory.
Boy.
So it's safety is really important. You have people, we live in a state where there's a lot of old houses, which means that there's small rooms. There's an upstairs, there's a downstairs. You know how many elderly fall down the stairs and break their arms? So,
Oh my goodness.
right? So aging in place is easier in a ranch, for example, than in a colonial.
Yeah.
But if the house that you grew up in is a little Dutch colonial, then you gotta figure out what's going to be the best thing for your parent.
Folks, you are listening to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law. talking with Mary Anne Charron. I'm Gary Byron. We're talking right now more specifically about, your power of attorney, your living will, your voluntary directives if you have advanced dementia. I kind of want to go back to, though, your power of attorney just for a moment. Like, when you think of, like, who should be considered first and foremost to be one's power of attorney?
Well, we hope it's the spouse.
Well, yeah, if the spouse is still living, right?
We hope you trust the person you married, right? So we hope that the first choice is going to be your spouse.
Okay.
And then if you're not married,
or
right?
if your spouse is deceased.
Correct. Then we hope people generally have children, not everyone, right? So you would pick a child, generally speaking.
Sure.
There are some people who, for whatever reasons, picking their child is not going to be their best choice. Maybe the child is disabled. Maybe the child they have an estrangement.
Irresponsible child.
Oh, well, we see plenty of that.
Problem child, right? No, I'm not looking at he always shoots me the eyeball. I'm talking about Ryan, our producer. He always shoots me an eyeball when I say something similar to that.
Ryan.
You almost like seek me out for that.
Right.
Oh, paid that.
So that, but it could be a sibling, right? Someone who you're close to. A lot of, people are close to their siblings, especially as we age, we tend to gravitate. We all have the same issues, the same problems. It's like, look, I'll be it for you. You'll be it for me, and could be grandchild, could be a niece, could be a nephew, depending on who you have a dynamic and a relationship with. So,
can you name more than one?
Yeah, actually you can. And sometimes that's a good idea. And sometimes that's a really, really bad idea. I have people who want their children to act together. They think it would be a good thing. Let's have the two kids work together on this. But if the two kids didn't get along when they were little, I'm not so sure they're going to get along. Or if they have different values, right? So if you have one kid who thinks that, and has a life where they spend their money one way, and you have another child who's judgmental of those choices, they're not going to agree about mom and dad. So sometimes I try to pull that out of them and say, tell me about your kids. But other times I have two children. They're in their early 20s. Okay. So they're adults. Yes. Would I necessarily choose to have my 20-something-year-old children have to make such weighty decisions for me? So I might say I pick Matthew or Nicole. All right. But I want my sister to be there too, so that she can provide some guidance and some wisdom. And so in that case, I do tell people, let's pick someone to be a co-agent with your child so that they don't have to feel like this is just too much for them. Because like I said,
that's a hard burden, right? When you have all that weight on your shoulders and you go, yeah, I'm the one that pulled the plug on mom.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, we did that because we respected her wishes. And, so I think you can internalize that a lot better when you're making the decision with somebody. I'm just giving you my opinion.
No,
I'm only one person.
That's why it depends. Everyone's circumstance is different. We have so many people, estate planning is not cookie cutter because it's completely dependent on who you are and what your life is.
Sure.
So,
how long does it take from the time somebody comes in to make an appointment with you? I mean, are you there for 2 hours? Is this done in an hour? Is this a couple of appointments, a couple of separate appointments?
Well, it's never just one appointment.
Okay.
So now I do everything by Zoom, right? Because the office is closed. And so we always have an initial consult where we try to work out the dynamics and what's important to you. Ned and I have questionnaires that we send out to people ahead of time so that they can think about these things. Because like I said, a lot of times people say, hey, I just need a simple will.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, but you know what? We're going to talk about a couple other things too. It usually takes about, for me, once I know what I'm drafting, it takes about 2 weeks for me to get a draft to you. Some attorneys don't send drafts. I do. Then I have another consult to go over everything.
Does it answer everything, like all different variables and all different scenarios?
Well, I think I had told you last week that my background was litigation.
Yes.
And so I am kind of a scenario person.
Okay.
So yeah, you try. I mean, we can't figure out everything, right?
Yeah.
And then once you're comfortable with your documents, then you come in and sign them.
And we're running out of time. We've only got a few minutes left. So let me ask you a question that's kind of been weighing on my mind for a little while this morning. And that is it ever too late? No, I don't want when the person passes away. No, I mean, like when you start getting into dementia and these arrangements were not made in advance, then you go, well, you bring your parent or whomever it is that you're the of, and you want to make sure that, but are they even in their sound mind to be making these decisions? Is that a gray area there? Or?
Well, it is a gray area. And so this is another reason why when I do have someone who's older, I want to meet with them. It is harder post-COVID because I have to see how they act and respond to me, because I have to evaluate capacity, because I'm acknowledging that they signed it. So there's an oath, right? That I have to give witnesses. And it is that, you depose and say that the person who signed their documents was over 18, was of sound mind and disposing mind and memory, was capable of understanding their documents, right? So if I have someone who's like really, out there, it's not going to happen. So you just can't do it. Yeah. So the gray area is okay, but once they cross over that gray area, you have to go into probate court.
Folks, you have been listening to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law. More specifically, Mary Anne Charron joining us this morning. You can contact Charter Oak Law. It's very simple. I would start with their website. That's www.charteroaklaw.com. Once again, very easy. charteroaklaw.com. If you'd like to give them a call, maybe you've got a personal matter when it comes to elder law and many of the various discussions that we've had just this morning, that's easy to do as well. Give them a call at 860-570-1229. Let me repeat that for you. 860-570-1229. You can also check them out in person. I guess you're in Bloomfield, right?
We're there every day.
Well, that's great. 34 Jerome Avenue, Suite 120 in Bloomfield.
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, if you've got an issue, maybe a general question that you would like maybe even answered on this very show, you don't have to leave your real name. You don't have to leave a name at all, for that matter. But it might be of best interest to our mass audience. So don't ever shy away from asking the question. Simply email legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. Again, legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. In the absence of your partner, Ned Byron, who will be with us next week for Mary Anne Charron over at charteroaklaw.com, I'm Gary Byron. Until next Saturday, have a good one, everybody. So long.